This podcast, including all discussions and examples, is for informational purposes only and does not constitute professional advice. The views expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any government agency or company. Today, former Navy Commander Creighton Holt shows insights on UAS advancements as well as ADS's ISR solutions for the U.S. and its allies. This is from the Dive Shop.
Hi, and welcome to From the Dive Shop. I'm Hillary Stallings-Warren, and I am joined by
Jen Edwards, and I am thrilled today that we get to introduce you to one of my dear friends and colleagues, Creighton Holt.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's an awesome day that I get to talk to two good friends, and I get to talk, hopefully, to some people via podcast. It's going to be a first time for me to be on a podcast.
So, Creighton, you are the director of ISR for ADS. That's a lot of letters. What does the director of ISR do?
So I've had the amazing experience of working here for 13 years since you hired me 13 years ago.
She hired me too.
Yes.
The thing.
6 years ago.
There you go. And here we are, right? I'm doing a podcast. But so ISR stands for Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance. So I have the awesome opportunity to lead a team of people that are technology and government procurement experts. And the technology is focused around, again, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And we split that up into two main categories. That's unmanned aircraft systems, also known as UAS, and electronic warfare, which includes counter-UAS and other things like radars and sensors, things you would put on a range. And so I've got part of my team serves their customers are other businesses, our partner suppliers, and they're my real experts about the technology. And what they do is they serve those customers by linking them up with some of your sales reps, some of your business development reps, when they hear about technological challenges and requirements that, say, Army customers have in the case of the Army team. The other part of my team serves programmatic accounts, in other words, what's called PEOs, PMAs, and PMWs. And these are giant programs that have money in the budget year after year to procure a specific commodity set. So those are a lot of fancy words, but it means that people who buy a lot of unmanned aircraft systems and a lot of counter-unmanned aircraft systems and a lot of electronic warfare systems, and then the data systems that process all the information that a drone might go out and find as it's executing its mission.
Ooh, ding, ding, ding. You said the magic word, drones. Everyone we talk to, from customers to friends in the neighborhood, everybody's excited about drones. And I know we're going to get to that because I'm really dying to hear about everything that's happening in that space and all the experiences you're having. But before we dive into drones, everyone's going to have to wait. Would you mind telling us a little bit about how you got here?
So when I was 8 years old, I saw my dad fly in an air show. My dad was a backseater in an F-4 Phantom. He was a Marine reservist, and he was what's called a radar intercept officer. And I had a pretty special dad, but when I saw him get out of that airplane and people asked for his autograph, I said, well, gee whiz, is there any doubt what I want to do? It was fly an airplane off of a ship, hopefully a fighter jet. So 8 years old, I said that's what I wanted to do, and thankfully, through ROTC and through a commission in the Navy, I had the amazing opportunity to fly helicopters. I flew H-3 helicopters in Puerto Rico. And then, luckily enough, I got a transition to F-18s. I found myself on my first deployment in the Arabian Sea on September 11th, 2001 on the USS Carl Vinson, and got to fly the first night of combat missions into Afghanistan it was about 3 weeks after September 11th.
Wow, incredible.
And then after that, thankfully got to go work as a staff officer at United States Special Operations Command, and had a little bit different off ramp on my career, and was a little bit upset about it. And a guy who's now a mentor and a member of our board of advisors, Hondo Gertz, said, well, Creighton, he was an active duty Air Force colonel at the time. He was what's called PEO fixed wing. He was an acquisitions guy. He said, Creighton, now instead of being the commander of a squadron and having a chance to impact a squadron or a ship or a battle group, you can now impact the entire force. If you want to become an acquisitions person, you can impact the entire military. And I thought, wow, that's really intriguing. So lo and behold, that's what I pushed towards, and I was accepted as an aerospace engineering duty officer. Spent the last 4 years of my career in the Navy working as an aerospace engineering duty officer and working on programs. And along the way, I was under the impression that the military had very easy means to procure things because when I flew things would just show up, right? A new flight suit, a new jet, an engine, a landing gear after we broke a landing gear on the ship. But as an acquisition professional, that wasn't the case. I specifically remember the day we'd spent 2 days in an integrated product team trying to select a type of aircraft to buy for Special Operations Command in Africa. It's called the Non-Standard Aviation Program. And we looked at all the key attributes of these airplanes. We looked at what they could do and how much they cost, how they would blend in with the local populace, and how they would execute their mission. And after 2 days, we came up with our findings, and we selected an airplane. And then Colonel Gertz rolled in, and we briefed him on it. And in the process of that, he said, okay, that's what you're going to select. How are you going to get it on contract? And we all scratched our heads. None of us had thought about that. We just assumed away that it would easily go through the contract. He said, well, if you go through option A, and he listed that option, you've blown your schedule because it costs extra. If you go through option B, you've blown you've blown your cost on the first one, you've blown your schedule on the second one, so you can't meet your training deployment. So in other words, you can't buy anything because you haven't thought about your acquisition strategy. And right then I thought, wow, that's a challenge that I had never thought of as a military member. And so fast forward, 2011, I retired. I had met Jen Edwards in the neighborhood through our kids and through our families. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was all over the map. I was going to go be an airline pilot. I was going to be a Red Air pilot flying opposition forces against the Navy here offshore. I was going to go work for Microsoft as a program manager. I was going to go work in private equity. But the only place that I ended up coming was Atlantic Diving Supply, ADS. And so that was 13 years ago.
So you were a helicopter pilot?
I was.
A fighter jet pilot?
I was.
And now you work with UAS drones?
I do.
What's your favorite, helicopter or fighter jet? And second, how is the military transitioning from using fighter jets to execute missions to using drones, UAS, to execute missions?
Great question. Well, first of all, flying helicopters and flying fighter jets was amazing. Flying helicopters was...
Be controversial. Pick one. You have to pick one. Go.
Who's your favorite child?
Yeah. I would say flying fighter jets, and I had the amazing opportunity to lead combat missions, and it would be 6 or 7 airplanes, or in training, I led 30 airplanes on a strike. And
wow.
and that's probably the hardest thing I've ever done. That's probably some of the most stress. And a side note about the little things, I told that 30-plane strike when we briefed, I said, if everybody is on the radio at the right time at 9:30 in the morning when the clock strikes 00, and everybody checks in with the correct call sign with a jet that works, we will crush this strike. We will slay the notional bad guys. It was opposition forces flying against us. And we will come back and high five each other at the end of the day. The small things made it. And at 9:30 when I checked in, and I said 99 strike package check in on TAC frequency, and 30 airplanes all checked in up and ready, I knew we were going to crush it. And lo and behold, 3 hours later, we came back and we crushed it. All right, that's a complete side story.
I like this.
I love that.
Okay.
Yes.
So amazing experience. Flying helicopters is great too. All right, I want to talk about drones though. While in Afghanistan, I remember Dan Smellick and I, a friend, he's still a friend, we got to fly a combat mission where we launched off the Carl Vinson. So 2 planes, 2 F-18s in our section. We had 2 other F-18s that were behind us. We had a prowler doing electronic warfare that was part of the strike. And then we had a big, giant airplane, an Air Force tanker that provided us gas. So what would that be? 6 airplanes, millions, probably hundreds of millions of dollars of hardware. And our mission is we flew to the northern part of Afghanistan, and the Taliban had Soviet-era T-54 to T-55 tanks, main battle tanks. And they were progressing up a road. And we flew for an hour and a half. We were on station for probably 30 minutes, and then we had to fly back, get gas a couple times, probably 2 hours back. So it's probably a 4.5, 5 hour mission. Hundreds of millions of dollars of hardware, and we destroyed Russian tanks using laser-guided GBU-12s. And we probably spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of the taxpayers' money to execute that mission. Destroyed probably 6 or 7 Russian battle tanks that were proceeding up a road. Let's contrast that to what you could do today with a drone. Granted, you couldn't do it from necessarily the same range, but you could come close. You could have a Predator flying, a single Predator, which is an unmanned aircraft system, so no one's in harm's way. That Predator could, in the next few years, is going to have little drones that it can drop from its wings. Those little drones could go down, and drones that you could almost build in a hobby shop for $1,000.
And you call the Predator the mothership at that point, right?
Yes, that's exactly. So this is something that's coming in the future. It's not something that's here today, but It's possible. They could demonstrate it probably this year. And it could drop other smaller drones, and those smaller drones would fly down around where the main battle tanks are, and they don't even have to have armor piercing. They simply wait until the hatch of the tank opens, and they could drop a mortar round in the hatch of the tank and destroy the tanks. Okay, so instead of hundreds of millions of dollars, probably 30 lives flying in a combat zone and returning to land on the ship at night, you could do it for 1/10 of that cost, at least. Probably much less in cost and in risk. So that's how warfare has changed in the last 25 years.
Wow, incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, and so let me take a pivot on that. In Ukraine today, right, where it's very close proximity of the Russians to the Ukrainians, right, to the Ukrainians. There's kids who learned on the internet how to build drones, and they're building them in their basements, and they're now part of these Ukrainian drone forces. And they'll take RPG rounds or mortar rounds, right? So very cheap rounds. They'll hang them from a drone that costs about $1,000 to build, that the kid built in his basement. And they will fly them out using FPV goggles, so it's goggles that you would wear. They fly them out using FPV goggles, and you can look on Telegram, LinkedIn, YouTube and find these videos. And they'll do the same thing. They'll wait for a hatch to open, and they'll drop it in the hatch. And they're the level of innovation on the battlefield today when you're fighting for your life is so high that I heard a story that they were using Juul, the igniters from Juul e-cigarettes as the arming mechanism to drop the mortars because they didn't have the correct components. So think about that level of innovation, that level of scale, and how cheap those things are. That's amazing, isn't it?
It is. How did drones start on the battlefield?
I would say I'm not the expert in it, but I know during World War II we actually had radio-controlled airplanes that we flew, and nobody knew back then what they would become, and the roadmap ahead is interesting. So nobody thought that we would have something that could take the place of a fighter jet at a fraction of the cost and execute effectively the same mission, right? Unfortunately for people like me, some of the glory is gone, or at least those wearing the uniform now. It's not as glorious to be 3 miles or even 2,000 miles behind enemy lines, flying from a trailer in a different country and execute a mission. But thankfully, it's less risk to our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines.
Yeah, you'll have to find other ways to find your adrenaline rush.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Climb something, jump off of it. I don't know. So I'm curious about, I know drones are what's really sexy, and we see it in movies and we see it in TV, how everyone's flying these like really cool things that they can get laser sharp in on a target. The other side of the team that you work with is counter-UAS.
Yep.
Less sexy, still really important. What's happening in that area?
Well, I would encourage anybody, you guys and any of our listeners, to go to the Wall Street Journal. There was an article in December about how Langley Air Force Base was shut down effectively for several months because of drones flying over Langley Air Force Base. That's 25 miles from where we are right now. And it included quotes from the wing commander, I believe, who's a one-star, who would go out. They had a window of time that they knew that these drones would be flying over. And these aren't small quadcopter drones either. Some of them are larger, and they're flying in formations. And so I encourage everybody to look at that because it gives you a glimpse into what's possible under a new paradigm with UAS. So again, the new paradigm is scale, very cheap, very easy to build. And so how do you defeat that? And so counter-UAS is the act of how do you mitigate that threat, and how do you defeat that threat, and how do you ensure that anything from power grids to military bases to dams, any kind of infrastructure, are safe. And so there's multiple pieces of that. So you have to think about there's a loop, and it all goes back to the John Boyd OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. Right. So I have to see something, I have to orient myself to it. I have to decide what to do, then I have to do it. Okay, well, same thing with counter-UAS. How are you going to observe the threat? Okay, and that's a multi-tier piece. So the first piece of that is electromagnetic. Is it radiating? Is it like your phone does? Are the radios talking to somebody else? Right? There's other ways that they can hack the algorithms, and they can see what kind of threat it might be. The next way is optical, right? The same way your eyeballs work. So think, oh, gee whiz, I see a seagull up in the sky. Well, that's how some of those sensors work. And then there's audio, where you actually hear it. And then they have radar, where the counter-UAS system is actually pushing out electromagnetic energy and trying to get a return off of it. And then what do you do once you see it? For Oceana Naval Air Station right now, they don't have the authorities, nor does any military base have the authorities today to defeat something unless it's a threat to infrastructure and people. So there's some authority and policy issues there as well. And then what do you do once you defeat it? Do you make it land where it is? Do you send out another drone to capture it or to destroy it? Do you simply sever the link of it and just let it fly itself into oblivion and land in some parking lot somewhere? Right? There's a lot of things that have yet to be worked out, and it's a very complex problem. And that's why it's been a great time to be in this industry. It's been a great time to be at ADS in that industry.
Is there, I know the question is often, why can't they just shoot it down?
Yep.
Is there a conflict between the airfield and the planes that are flying in and out of Langley with those drones?
Yes, it presents not just a security threat, but it's also a safety of flight threat. Is the $250 million F-22 Raptor as it takes off, is it gonna hit a drone? So that's another issue. So there's multiple levels of security risk, safety of flight risk.
So you're uniquely positioned in your role that you're actually seeing, because ADS is the largest provider of UAS and counter-UAS to the DoD right now. Is that correct? I'm not making that up, right? I've heard you say that, so I want to make sure it's true.
Yeah, let me qualify that, and I would challenge anybody to put it in the comments on YouTube of the how do you like that, where you can buy our merch. No, you can't.
No, you can't.
But ADS, over the last 10 years, ADS has been the largest provider of small militarized UAS in the world. And when I say militarized, I mean non-lethal. I mean, there's companies like Raytheon that provides a solution called a Coyote. There's companies like AeroVironment that provide a Switchblade, and those have kinetic payloads that explode. And we don't provide those because we don't have the ability to put kinetic capability through contracts, nor is that really someplace we're moving. So I would suggest that, yes, we are the largest provider of small Group 1 through 3, nano through Group 3. Those are the sizes of small unmanned aircraft systems, militarized small unmanned aircraft systems in the world to the military.
To that, how are we doing? You know what we're getting. You have a good sense of what's getting out. I know I see it from an Army perspective.
Mm-hmm.
How are we doing as a country? How are we doing at defending ourselves and deploying those resources? Are we doing a good job?
Great question. I think there's some amazing efforts everywhere from the White House under multiple administrations to Capitol Hill to industry. I think we're doing okay. I think we could do better. The fact that we now have an emphasis, I was on a call yesterday with a startup company in Florida, and their goal is to onshore all of the parts, pieces, and components that make up small UAS. Little did you know, but don't have one with me. I got one up in my office, but the propellers, the little motors at the end of every quadcopter and on pretty much every single unmanned aircraft system, there is no large scale. There's some production facilities that are standing up, but there is no large scale production for those motors in the United States today. They all come from primarily one company called T-Motor in China. So
Hillary, business opportunity.
there you go. So and so there's new policy guidance. It's called the Blue SUAS list. It's directed by the National Defense Authorization Act of 2020, I believe, that says what parts and pieces can be included or can be built must be built in the United States because of security concerns versus what parts and pieces can be built elsewhere. So I would say we're doing okay. What I love about the story of ISR technology in general is that as goes consumer technology, so goes the military technology. So let me talk about that. Let me talk about why I think we're in a killer industry, at an amazing business with an amazing business model at a great time. Okay, so there's this thing called the Defense Acquisition Life Cycle Framework, and it's the giant chart. I call it the Defense Acquisition Chart of Doom. I had months and months of classes on it when I was an acquisition guy. It's also called the horse blanket because it's so complex, and I call it the Chart of Doom. Okay. And that chart is the process by which we develop capability, identify the requirements, develop the capability, develop the manufacturing, put it on contract, plan and budget for it, field it, sustain it, train everybody for it, build the software, and then ultimately dispose of it. And so it could go for 50 years in the case, 60 years in the case of a ship, or 30 years in the case of an aircraft program like a Joint Strike Fighter and F-18. And so that process was developed with the Cold War in mind. It was developed in the 60s and 70s. And it is killer at long lead capital items like a Virginia-class nuclear submarine, like a Joint Strike Fighter. It takes a long time to develop that kind of technology because no one in the world outside of the military buys Joint Strike Fighters or Virginia-class submarines. But so think back to the 70s, those of you that are old enough, like us, right? Not so much you.
I'm not owning that.
What kind of technology did you have in your house in the 70s? TV, maybe?
Yeah.
Radio?
Again, I don't know.
You could ask your mom.
I'll ask my mom. Right.
Okay. In the 70s, right? Our only touch of technology was television, maybe a car, maybe right. We didn't even have ATMs everywhere.
That's right.
And so that's when that defense acquisition framework, the process was built out. Fast forward, and this phone that I have in my pocket it'll do 17 trillion operations per second. So you guys have supercomputers in your pocket. And at maximum capacity, I think the height of the iPhone production line was building 500,000 iPhone 15s per day. Per day. Okay, so think of that scale. Think of what that scale, if you can apply it to military technology, think about what that can do. And it may not necessarily be iPhones for soldiers, sailors, airmen, guardians, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen, whatever. How do you like how inclusive that was?
That was great.
Okay, yeah. It could be the software. It could be the processing capability. It could be the CMOS, which is the camera on it. You didn't know that the camera is called a CMOS.
I did not.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. And so if you can take parts and pieces of that, or if you can take all of that and use it for military purposes, it'll iterate very quickly. Virginia-class submarine, for many reasons, cannot. There's not the market for it. Moreover, at the same time that we've got all this new technology, we also have we have private equity that is pouring capital into these markets. So gone are the days where it's solely the government, solely the military who has scientists like at Los Alamos who are designing technology. They still design some amazing things at government labs. But now you've got an entire section of the U.S. economy that is pouring dollars into military capability. And what's cool about those companies is that they're not just responding to requests for proposal. They're doing what Wayne Gretzky said. What's the key to good hockey? Don't go to where the puck is, but go to where the puck is going. So they're building technology that's specific for military use or is dual consumer, industrial, and military use of where they think the warfighter might need capability. Okay, so then if you go back to the defense acquisition horse blanket, how do you rapidly get that technology in the hands of the warfighter? That's where ADS fits in. We have the contractual abilities, priming 70 plus different contracts to get those things in the hands of the warfighter.
Do you see a world where every warfighter has a drone in their pocket, like they do, like consumers have a phone in their pocket?
Great question. I see a world not just where, and when I say drone, I'll say it may not be a flying drone. It might be a robotic, a UGV, unmanned ground vehicle. It could be a USV, unmanned surface vehicle for the ocean or for a river. It could be a UUSV, which is an undersea unmanned surface sea vehicle. It could be maybe in the future. I even heard Lucky Palmer, who's the founder of Anduril. He's an interesting guy that I can talk about as well. He was talking about subterranean. In other words, Dig Dug style.
Tunneling, yeah.
Yeah, you probably don't remember Dig Dug, but that was
I do
a
not.
really cool 70s.
I do.
And you're not old enough, yeah. Yeah, we could go to the Piggly Wiggly and you get 2 plays for a quarter across town. Dig Dug, so it's pretty cool. But it's a subterranean thing. Okay, so I envision a world where instead of one controller, one soldier, one controller, one drone, one autonomous vehicle, one unmanned aircraft system, it's going to be one soldier, multiple systems with one controller or no controller, right? And it's simply the warfighter gets an alert on their end-user device, on their smartphone, on their tablet, on their computer, saying, I need action. Something happened. Something tripped my software because one of my sensors, one of my drones saw something.
What's the easiest way to get there?
Yes. So let me give you an example of that, and I'll use our parking lot here. That's just to the south of us. Okay. Say I've got a drone in a box. Skydio X10D has a drone in a box, and that drone is tied in with sensors. So say we set it up, we program it so that, and we don't actually program it. We use English to tell AI what we want to program it, right? And there's sensors around the parking lot. And the parking lot sensors say it's Saturday or it's Friday after 7 o'clock. If you sense someone in the parking lot through these sensors, through the cameras that we already have set up, then I want you to launch the drone. But wait, if it is someone who has got a license plate number, who's an ADS employee, or has a face that we recognize, then don't launch the drone. By the way, I'm not saying we need to have this or that I'm just using our parking lot as an example, right? I don't know if I like this level of surveillance in my own workplace, but I'm just using it as a vignette. I want to make that clear.
Okay.
Okay, so the software says someone we recognize comes into the parking lot, then do nothing, okay? Now someone we don't recognize comes in the parking lot. Well, there's a drone in a box on the roof, a Skydio X10, and that drone in the box checks with Oceana Tower to see if it can launch. It's also got a counter-drone system to see if there's any other drones or airplanes flying in the airspace. And the answer is no other drones. Oceana says, yes, you can fly, and the drone launches. And then it's programmed to stand off and not alert the person who's in the parking lot that it's flying and observing them. So it backs off, it watches the person, and no one has been notified. Our security people are, right, I didn't get a call, no one got a call. But then all of a sudden, they come close to the building. Now, somebody's phone rings. So completely autonomously. So that's really no one programming. Again, not advocating this for Homeland Security or for corporate security. I'm just saying as a for instance of a vignette of how this could work.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Do you see flying cars
All right.
in the future?
Actually, great question. All right. There's a guy.
Stop it. He was prepared for flying
Yes.
cars.
I'm so
impressed.
glad.
We did not plan that ahead.
All right. Recall there's a show called The Jetsons. It was a cartoon that came on back in the 70s.
Yes,
Yes,
I've heard
I
of that
remember
one.
it.
Yes.
Meet George Jetson. All right. And it started with a scene of flying cars. And lo and behold, in the early 2010s, one of the PayPal founders, his name is Peter Thiel. He's also one of the investors in Anduril and Palantir, which are big defense companies. So Peter Thiel said, we expected the future to hold flying cars, and all we got was 140 characters on Twitter. Okay, so in other words, the promise hasn't been achieved. I don't know about flying cars, but I will say that there's a lot going on right now in the autonomy space, in the AI space. What you're talking about is called advanced air mobility. And our little awesome town here of Hampton Roads or community of Hampton Roads is making big efforts into advanced air mobility, right? The premise being—
Tell me more.
Well, the premise being, I'm not an expert on it, but the premise being that if I want to drive to the far western side of the state, what are my options? Or if I want to get there, right? I can fly to Atlanta and then maybe fly to Chattanooga on Delta.
Yeah,
and
or
then drive.
Roanoke Airport.
Yeah, Roanoke. And right, what does that take? 6 hours, something like that.
If
There's
not
no
more,
good
yeah.
way.
There's no good way.
There's no
There's
good
no
way.
good way.
But if I had an airplane that could take off on a short runway like Hampton Roads Executive, and maybe had some kind of fancy new propulsion and some kind of tilt rotors or something and could carry 10 people, there's probably 10 people today that want to fly to that part of the state, right? So that's kind of the advanced air mobility piece, and autonomy is going to play a big role in that. So what's interesting when we talk about autonomy, and autonomy as it applies to a drone, there's parallels, of course, to a car. I don't know if anybody's driven in a Tesla over the last 6 months.
Driven, no. Ridden in, yes.
Okay, right. There's now full driving capability. So there's 6 different levels of autonomy. So level 0 of autonomy is 1978 Ford F-100, right? Gear shifter, steering wheel, brake, and accelerator. My 4-year-old used pickup truck, 5-year-old used pickup truck has got speed sensing, cruise control that can see the person in front, and then it'll sort of maintain the lane. That would be kind of level 1, level 2. And it goes all the way up to level 5. Level 5 means you basically give it commander's intent. So commander's intent for UAS was the example I just gave, where, hey, the commander wants you to watch what you're programmed for, which is the parking lot, and only launch if you meet these intent, and there's not even a human in the loop. So when it comes to flying, and I happen to do a little bit of flying, I know, little do you guys know that when a Delta 757 takes off out of Atlanta, they can put the autopilot on pretty much immediately right after takeoff, and then if they're going to do a Cat 3 ILS, they basically don't have to touch the controls the entire flight. They land at the airport, line up on the runway, shoot the approach down at a big airport like Atlanta, down to less than minimum, or down to effectively 0-0, the airplane will flare for it on its own, and it'll roll itself out on the runway, and the brakes will apply. So it's pretty amazing what autonomy will do. So, and the new Teslas, you give it commander's intent. You say, I'm at home, it knows where you are, it knows what the traffic is between home and work, it knows what the weather is. It could struggle with weather a little bit. It'll select the best route. There's even modes like hurry mode, where you say, hey, I'm in a hurry. And it'll spend more time in the left lane, and it might break the law a little bit. It might go a little faster, right? And so it's pretty cool, right? Of course, you have to be there. You have to be ready to intervene. So it's not the full level 5 autonomy yet. So it's a fascinating time to be in this business. And all of the things, the question could be asked, well, Creighton, what does Delta Airlines flying into Atlanta have to do with military technology, or what does Tesla have to do with military technology? Well, it's all the same problem set. It's autonomy, it's the security of the communications channels, it's the robustness of the software, it's the it's the whole thing from the person who is executing the mission or directing the mission to what the end product is of the mission. So, and maybe there's something there for our listeners, for you guys and for our listeners. People think of drones today as, and the mission has been for the last 30 years for unmanned aircraft systems, has been basically go out and find and have a video, create a video. And the video is cued by electronic warfare sometimes. So in a big airplane, a big airplane like a Predator, it might have a signals intelligence payload that could find a specific radio or a specific transmitter or a specific iPhone, a specific phone. And then that's where it cues the electro-optical ball to look. And that's where it takes a video. So for example, if it knew a certain type of car that a high-value target drives, a certain phone that person has, a certain type of radio, it could find it. Now it's cued to that certain car. Now we look for that person to get out of the car. So that would be kind of a larger UAS, right? And so going forward, those missions are going to change, right? Those are still be important missions. But there's many other missions. I was just talking about a force protection mission here, the example of our parking lot. But what about that same drone that during the weekend is protecting infrastructure, doing force protection for a facility? Well, during the week, say you need to scan the building, or say there's a bridge next door, or say there's police who it also operates as part of the police network. And the police get a call here. Well, maybe the police could tap into it and it could fly around because there's a 911 call next door. Or the infrastructure here needs to be inspected. So it could autonomously, and I've done this to my house, where the drone will autonomously fly around the house and take thousands of pictures of your house and then create a 3D image of your house. And you say, oh, look, I need to get on the eaves and I need to paint the eaves because I've got a little bit of paint cracking on the eaves up high. Or here's where there's, say you've got a thermal camera. Here's where heat's leaking out. I need to take my insulation and pack it better around my chimney, those kind of things.
Okay, when does it paint the eaves?
Well, that's probably coming, right? Maybe one day. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So what are the other missions? So I think that's my point, is that there's a whole bunch of other missions that unmanned aircraft systems can execute, or drones. It could be a robotic vehicle on the ground. There's a whole lot of other things that they could do.
Exciting stuff.
Really, really cool.
Uh-huh.
So taking it back to your history, how do you apply your history as an aviator, or these missions, the mission that you discussed where you had 30 planes in formation. How do you apply that to your role as a director at ADS?
Great question. So I'm here for a lot of reasons. I think all of us are not living an examined life. I think Socrates was the one who said that we always live a life of becoming. And so
I need to take a pause there and just note for everyone that the podcast just quoted Socrates. Back to you, Creighton.
Yeah, there you go. Right. So we all live a life of becoming. So what do I want to become? What do you guys want to become? So I'm kind of talking personally here. And so when I think about strikes and I think about leading a team or getting to be part of a team, Madeleine Albright, former Secretary of State under Bill Clinton, I think, she said that the best days of her life are the ones where there's much expected of her and she delivers on those things, right? And I would add in, for me personally, that the best days of my life are the ones where I have a team that I'm counting on and that is counting on me, and I'm able to deliver those things. So let me turn that around. Hopefully, like when you're flying a single-seat fighter jet and doing cool and amazing things, it's very easy to fall for the poison that it's all about me. And as you grow into that a little bit, you see that it's not. It's never just about us. Maybe if you're Patrick Mahomes, but it's not even about him.
He even has Travis Kelce behind him.
Yes, exactly. He's got an amazing offensive line. He's got an amazing coaching staff. He's got amazing trainers. He's got a lot. He'd probably be he's probably wiser than most. He would be probably one of the first to say it's not all about him.
You wouldn't be up in the air in the fighter jet if the fueler didn't put the gas in the jet.
Bingo. Thank you for that lead in. Because the F-18s that I had in my fleet squadron, every single hour that airplane flew was between 35 and 40 hours of maintenance man hours.
That you were not doing.
That's exactly right. So I was fortunate enough to be the guy on occasion that would get to go fly that thing around and go do amazing missions. But to think that it was all about me and all about my skills and abilities, right, being more important than someone else's role. Hondo Geertz has this saying, and the saying is that strategic importance to the fight doesn't correlate exactly to proximity to the objective. In other words, of strategic importance to that F-18 flying is the pilot who's pushing the pickle button to drop the bomb. But it's also the program manager that made the decision 10 years prior to cut costs and get it on contract earlier, right? It's the coder that sits at China Lake that wrote the flight safety software in the operational flight program that kept me alive, right? It's a team. And so that's what I get to do here. I get to be part of a high-performing, high-expectation environment. It's constantly changing, very dynamic, and it's not about me. It's about serving the warfighter, right? And so I'll go back to the life of becoming. Am I becoming somebody who is all focused on myself and my own personal glory, that's a life of misery. What's a life of awesomeness is a life focused on the team, a life focused on others, a life of the golden rule, right? Doing it to others as I would have them do to me. That's what's awesome.
Well, I think that's a great place to stop.
I agree. Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Creighton. We are so proud to have you on Team ADS.
Let's go. All right. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks, Creighton.
All right. Cool.